tile, so your little faces are going to be in the video. If you prefer not to have that happen, just go ahead and take your video off, and thank you in advance for muting yourselves. Okay, so we're going to continue with reading The Alchemist. I, again, continue to be surprised that you guys selected this book. It has a little bit of like magical realism in it, and there's some really deep meanings behind each lesson and each adventure that this young boy, Santiago, is going on. Yesterday, I read a little bit to you about how he's like 4 days away from going to this town, and in the town, there's a girl that he's like really crushing on, and he cannot wait to get there and say something to her. And so he was kind of scheming about like what he could do. He was like, maybe I'll shear my sheep, and like, what are the things that I could talk to her about? I'll tell her like all about the stories and the things that I know because I'm educated and she is not. And then he decided to interact with a gypsy woman, and kind of forget how that all happened again, but she kind of read his palm, and he went in, I think, because he was worried about his dreams. He keeps having this reoccurring dream, and he wanted some answers. And she said, I'll tell you the answers. You're going to find a treasure in the Great Pyramids at Giza in Egypt, but I want a tenth of your like earnings or your treasure or whatever. And he was like, what? This is a ripoff. Like, come on, are you serious? And so he was like, okay, fine, sure, whatever. So he's sitting on like a bench in the plaza, drinking his wine, I guess. And this old man started chatting him up, and he was kind of like, all right, I don't really want to engage right now with you, but here we go. And the old man told him that he was the king of the town, and then he wrote a message in the sand. So I'm going to read that last bit just to refresh our memories. So there in the sand of the plaza of that small city, the boy read the names of his father and his mother and the name of the seminary he had attended. He read the name of the merchant's daughter, which he hadn't even known, and he read things he had never told anyone. So he's like, what witchcraft is this? These people are asking for my future treasure, which I didn't even know existed, that they think I'm going to find, and then they know about my life, and I just met them for the first time. Are they psychic? What is going on? Okay, so that's where I left off. That was a really awful summary, but you guys didn't offer to help, so I did the best I could. We're on page 21. I'm the king of Salem, the old man had said. Why would a king be talking with a shepherd? The boy asked, awed and embarrassed. For several reasons. Let's say that the most important is that you have succeeded in discovering your personal legend. Personal legend in this text is capitalized, and so we know it as the call to action, the call to a journey, and usually it's the hero that is about to embark in some sort of journey, and that for us is Santiago. The boy didn't know what a person's personal legend was. It's what you've always wanted to accomplish. Everyone, even when they are young, knows what their personal legend is. At that point in their lives, everything is clear and everything is possible. They are not afraid to dream and to yearn for everything like they would like to see happen to them in their lives. But as time passes, a mysterious force begins to convince them that it will be impossible for them to realize their personal legend. So the old man is saying, or the king rather, of Salem, is saying that everyone knows their inherent truth when they are young. And they know, what they should be called to do in their life, but based on maybe conditioning by society, that goal for them is inaccessible and they're not able to access it. None of what the old man was saying made much sense to the boy, but he wanted to know what the mysterious force was that the merchant's daughter would be impressed when he told her about that. It's a force that appears to be negative, but actually shows you how to realize your personal legend. It prepares your spirit and your will because there's one great truth on this planet. Whoever you are or whatever it is that you do when you really want something, it's because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. It's your mission on Earth. Dang. So some of you are reading about Hinduism and social studies, and I don't know where you're at with that, but this is kind of getting at a little bit of Hinduism right here, and that we all carry with us some part of the universe that's attached to Brahma, which is the all-seeing, all-knowing, genderless force in the universe through our soul, which is known as Atman. And so I think that's interesting that it's coming up here now. There's a lot of overlap in between religions of the world. And we know that Paulo Coelho was a Catholic or Christian, one of those. But we see that Hinduism notion of the soul and the workings of the universe come up again. All right. Even when all you do is travel or marry the daughter of a textile merchant? Yes, or even search for treasure. The soul of the world is nourished by people's happiness and also by unhappiness, envy, and jealousy. To realize one's to realize one's destiny is a person's only real obligation. All things are one. And when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it. They were both silent for a time, observing the plaza and the townspeople. It was the old man who spoke first. Why do you tend a flock of sheep? Because I like to travel. The old man pointed to a baker standing in his shop window at one corner of the plaza. When he was a child, that man wanted to travel too, but he decided first to buy his bakery and put some money aside. When he's an old man, he's going to spend a month in Africa. He never realized that people are capable at any time in their lives of doing what they dream of. He should have decided to become a shepherd, the boy said. Well, he thought about it, the old man said, but bakers are more important people than shepherds. Bakers have homes while shepherds sleep out in the open. Parents would rather see their children marry bakers than shepherds. The boy felt a pang in his heart, thinking about the merchant's daughter. There was surely a baker in her town. The old man continued. In the long run, what people think about shepherds and bakers becomes less important for them than their own personal legends. The old man leafed through the book and fell to reading a page he came to. The boy waited and then interrupted the old man just as he himself had been interrupted. Why are you telling me this? Because you are trying to realize your personal legend, and you are at the point when you're about to give it all up. And that's what you always appear, and that's when you always appear on the scene? Not always in this way, but I always appear in one form or another. Sometimes I appear in the form of a solution or a good idea. At other times, at a crucial moment, I make it easier for things to happen. There are other things I do too, but most of the time people don't realize I've done them. The old man related that the week before, he had been forced to appear before a minor and had taken minor not as like minor, like a person or child under 18, like minor as in like that's their occupation. They're underground mining for minerals, rocks, something. The miner had abandoned everything to go mining for emeralds. For 5 years, he had been working a certain river and had examined hundreds of thousands of stones looking for an emerald. The miner was about to give it all up, right at the point when, if he were to just examine one more stone, just one more, he would have found his emerald. Since the miner had sacrificed everything to his personal legend, the old man decided to become involved. He transformed himself into a stone that rolled up in the miner's foot. The miner, with all the anger and frustration of his 5 fruitless years, picked up the stone and threw it aside. But he had thrown it with such a force that it broke the stone it fell upon, and there, embedded in the broken stone, was the most beautiful emerald in the world. People learn early in their lives what is their reason for being, said the old man with a certain bitterness. Maybe that's why they give it up so early on, too. But that's the way it is. The boy reminded the old man that he'd said something about hidden treasure. Treasure is uncovered by the force of flowing water, and it is buried by the same currents, said the old man. If you want to learn about your own treasure, you will have to give me 1/10 of your flock. What about 1/10 of my treasure? The old man looked disappointed. If you start out by promising what you don't even have yet, you'll lose your desire to work toward getting it. The boy told him that he had already promised to give 1/10 of his treasure to the gypsy. Gypsies are experts at getting people to do that, sighed the old man. In any case, it's good that you've learned that everything in life has its price. This is what the warriors of the light try to teach. The old man returned the book to the boy. Tomorrow at the same time, bring me 1/10 of your flock, and I will tell you how to find the hidden treasure. Good afternoon. And he vanished around the corner of the plaza. Little page break here. I'm going to stop and just recap that scene. So this is also my first time reading this book, and I'm thinking that this man, the king of Salem, or whoever he says, is speaking in metaphors. And he's basically saying that your life journey is like really happening now, and I think every hero at some point needs a mentor, needs a coach, needs a little encouragement to continue on. And I think he's offering him that in this moment. I'm curious to what you guys think. I'll ask when I'm done. All right. Continuing on, the boy began again to read this book, but he was no longer able to concentrate. He was tense and upset because he knew that the old man was right. He went over to the bakery and bought a loaf of bread, thinking about whether or not he should tell the baker what the old man had said about him. Sometimes it's better to leave things as they are, he thought to himself, and decided to say nothing. If he were to say anything, the baker would spend 3 days thinking about giving it all up, even though he had gotten used to the way things were. The boy could certainly resist causing that kind of anxiety for the baker, so he began to wander through the city and found himself at the gates. There was a small building there with a window at which people bought tickets to Africa, and he knew that Egypt was in Africa. "Can I help you?" asked the man behind the window. "Maybe tomorrow," said the boy, moving away. If he sold just one of his sheep, he'd have enough to get to the other shore of the strait. The idea frightened him. "Another dreamer," said the ticket seller to his assistant, watching the book walk away. The boy walk away. He doesn't have enough money to travel. While standing at the ticket window, the boy had remembered his flock and decided he should go back to being a shepherd. In 2 years, he had learned everything about shepherding. He knew how to shear sheep, how to care for pregnant ewes, and how to protect the sheep from wolves. He knew all the fields and pastures of Andalusia, and he knew what was a fair price for every one of his animals. He decided to return to his friend's stable by the longest route possible. As he walked past the city's castle, he interrupted his return and climbed the stone ramp that led to the top of the wall. From there, he could see Africa in the distance. Someone had once told him that it was from there that the Moors had come to occupy all of Spain. He could see almost the entire city from where he sat, including the plaza where he had talked with the old man. Curse the moment I met the old man, he thought. He had come to the town only to find a woman who could interpret his dream. Neither the woman nor the old man were at all impressed by the fact that he was a shepherd. They were solitary individuals who no longer believed in things and didn't understand that shepherds become attached to their sheep. He knew everything about each member of his flock. He knew which ones were lame, which one was to give birth 2 months from now, and which were the laziest. He knew how to shear them and how to slaughter them. If he ever decided to leave them, they would suffer. The wind began to pick up. He knew that wind, people called it the levanter, because on it the Moors had come from the Levant at the eastern end of the Mediterranean. The levanter increased in intensity. Here I am, between my flock and my treasure, the boy thought. He had to choose between something he had become accustomed to and something he wanted to have. There was also the merchant's daughter, but she wasn't as important as his flock because she didn't depend on him. Maybe she didn't even remember him. He was sure that it made no difference to her on which day he appeared. For her, every day was the same. And when each day is the same as the next, it's because people fail to recognize the good things that happen in their lives every day that the sun rises. Man, this book is gold. There's so much to unpack here. I left my father and my mother in the town castle behind. They have gotten used to my being away, and so have I. The sheep will get used to my not being there too, the boy thought. From where he sat, he could observe the plaza. People continued to come and go from the baker's shop. A young couple sat on the bench where he had talked with the old man, and they kissed. That baker, he said to himself without contemplating the thought. The levanter was still getting stronger, and he felt its force on his face. The wind had brought the Moors, yes, but it had also brought the smell of the desert and of the veiled women. It had brought with it the sweat and the dreams of men who had once left to search for the unknown and for gold and adventure and for the pyramids. The boy felt jealous of the freedom of the wind and saw that he could have the same freedom. There was nothing to hold him back except himself. The sheep, the merchant's daughter, and the fields of Andalusia were only steps along the way to his personal legend. The next day, the boy met the old man at noon. He brought 6 sheep with him. "I'm surprised," the boy said. "My friend bought all the other sheep immediately. He said that he had always dreamed of being a shepherd and that it was a good omen." "That's the way it always is," said the old man. "It's called the principle of favorability. When you play cards the first time, you are almost sure to win. Beginner's luck." "Why is that?" Because they're a force that wants you to realize your personal legend. It whets your appetite with the taste of success. Then the old man began to inspect the sheep, and he saw that one was lame. The boy explains that it wasn't important since that sheep was the most intelligent of the flock and produced the most wool. "Where is the treasure?" he asked. "It's in Egypt, near the pyramids." The boy was startled. The old woman had said the same thing, but she hadn't charged him anything. "In order to find the treasure, you will have to follow the omens. God has prepared a path for everyone to follow. You just have to read the omens that he left for you." Before the boy could reply, a butterfly appeared and fluttered between him and the old man. He remembered something his grandfather had once told him, that butterflies were a good omen, like crickets and like grasshoppers, like lizards and like four-leaved clovers. "That's right," said the old man, able to read the boy's thoughts, "just as your grandfather taught you. These are good omens." The old man opened his cape, and the boy was struck by what he saw. The old man wore a breastplate of heavy gold, covered with precious stones. The boy recalled the brilliance he had noticed on the previous day. He really was a king. He must be disguised to avoid encounters with thieves. "Take these," said the old man, holding out a white stone and a black stone that had been embedded at the center of the breastplate. "They are called Urim and Thummim. The black signifies yes, and the white no. When you are unable to read the omens, they will help you to do so. Always ask an objective question. But if you can, try to make your own decisions. The treasure is at the pyramids, that you already knew. But I had to insist on the payment of 6 sheep because I helped you to make your decision." The boy put the stones in his pouch. From then on, he would make his own decisions. Don't forget that everything you deal with is only one thing and nothing else. And don't forget the language of omens. And above all, don't forget to follow your personal legend through to its conclusion. But before I go, I just want to tell you a little story. A certain shopkeeper sent his son to learn about the secret of happiness from the wisest man in the world. That lad wandered through the desert for 40 days and finally came upon a beautiful castle high atop a mountain. It was there that the wise men lived. Rather than finding a saintly man, though, our hero, on entering the main room of the castle, saw a hive of activity. Tradesmen came and went. People were conversing in the corners. A small orchestra was playing soft music, and there was a table covered with platters of the most delicious food in that part of the world. The wise man conversed with everyone, and the boy had to wait for 2 hours before it was his turn to be given the man's attention. The wise man listened attentively to the boy's explanation of why he had come, but he told him that he didn't have time to just then explain the secret of happiness. He suggested that the boy look around the palace and return in 2 hours. "Meanwhile, I want to ask you to do something," said the wise man, handing the boy a teaspoon that held 2 drops of oil. "As you wander around, carry this spoon with you without allowing the oil to spill." The boy began climbing and descending the many stairways of the place, keeping his eyes fixed on the spoon. After 2 hours, he returned to the room where the wise man was. "Well," asked the wise man, "did you see the Persian tapestries that are hanging in my dining hall? Did you see the garden that it took the master gardener 10 years to create? Did you notice the beautiful parchments in my library?" The boy was embarrassed and confessed that he had observed nothing. His only concern had been not to spill the oil that the wise man had entrusted to him. "Then go back and observe the marvels of my world," said the wise man. "You cannot trust a man if you don't know his house." Relieved, the boy picked up the spoon and returned to his exploration of the palace, this time observing all of the works of art on the ceilings and walls. He saw the gardens, the mountains all around him, and the beauty of the flowers and the taste with which everything had been selected. Upon returning to the wise man, he had related in every detail everything he had seen. "But where are the drops of oil I entrusted to you?" asked the wise man. Looking down at the spoon he held, the boy saw that the oil was gone. "Well, there is only one piece of advice I can give you," said the wisest of wise men. The secret of happiness is to see all the marvels of the world and never to forget the drops of oil on the spoon." The shepherd said nothing. He had understood the story that the old king had told him. A shepherd may like to travel, but he should never forget about his sheep. The old man looked at the boy, and with his hands held together, made several strange gestures over the boy's head. Then, taking his sheep, he walked away. I'm a little over my time limit for today, so I'm going to stop, which is kind of perfect. There's a little page break here. Okay, this book is dense and intense, and as soon as we're finished up today, around like 2 or whenever I finish with Hangouts, I think I'm going to stop and pause and do kind of a little analysis of what we've read so far. There's stories within stories, there's metaphors all over the place, and I think it's just kind of time to pause and really take stock and inventory and analyze what we've read so far. Okay, I did promise it is a National Poem in Your Pocket Day, so I'm going to start there. I am just going to really quickly turn off the recording. All right.